Hey, it's Mark Lanier with your video thought for the day. This week we've been talking about different ways and attitudes and mindsets for reading the Bible. And today is the fourth day of these. I've got 6 of them that I stole from my current preacher, Pastor Jarrett. He put these up on the screen Sunday a week ago. I thought that'd be great. I've still not figured out how I'm going to get 6 into 5 days, but I'll worry about that more tomorrow because today is day 4. So we've already covered reading the Bible with the idea that you need to look for commands to obey, you need to look for sins to avoid, you need to look for blessings to enjoy. You can get those on days 1, 2, and 3. And then today is day 4, examples to follow. Now, I love this because this kind of has gone full circle for me this week. One of my childhood preachers, a mentor, a spiritual brother, and a spiritual father to me, is a fellow named Ken Dye. Now, Ken currently lives with his sweet wife Jane in Nashville, and Ken still keeps up with me like I'm one of his kids. And Ken has been emailing me lately some ideas for thoughts for the day that I may want to use in the future. But one of them really plugs in well today. So I'm going to reach back to a preacher of mine 45 years ago, along with a preacher of mine today, and merge those two and talk about reading the Bible, looking for examples to follow. Now, Ken Dye had his PhD or whatever his doctorate was in marriage and family counseling, even though he was our preacher. And he always had an idea for how to help people out in life and how to help people do life better. And one of the things that struck me in an email he sent me recently was how he talked about we need to be better at learning how to forgive people. And the example he drew from this was Joseph. So Ken Dye was reading the Bible with an idea of this fourth way to read the Bible, examples to follow. And the example of Joseph is really a marvelous example of how to forgive, but also of how we can read the Bible and be inspired to live better. Joseph was an Old Testament figure. You read his story in the book of Genesis, and he was one of a dozen boys that his dad had, and was way down near the end, like child 11. He was kind of a favored child, and his dad, his dad wasn't the best parent in the world. He really kind of played favorites with Joseph, and Joseph's brothers had sibling rivalry to the nth degree. They didn't like him. They didn't like him at all. It didn't help things that Joseph seemed almost tone deaf to it. He'd have dreams of where his brothers would fall at their feet and worship him. And he would tell his brothers about those dreams. And his brothers finally got fed up and they decided they were just going to kill him. Ultimately, after throwing him in a pit, they decided not to leave him to die, but to sell him into slavery. So they sell him to a caravan headed to Egypt. He gets thrown into slavery or sold into slavery. He does pretty well for a while, but then because he won't succumb to the seductions of his boss's wife, he gets thrown into prison. Now, ultimately, his life is horrendous. Ripped out of his home, put into slavery, put into prison, but by God's foresight and mercy, Joseph comes out of it as the second most powerful man in Egypt, because he's the one who has the wisdom to help Pharaoh figure out how to take his people and his nation through a massive 7-year famine. It's during that famine that Joseph's brothers come to him and basically need his help for survival. Joseph, at first they don't recognize him. Joseph, he's been gone for umpteen gazillion years at this point, and they don't recognize him. They just know this very powerful man in Egypt has the power of life and death over them. When they suddenly realize who Joseph is, they fear the worst. They last dealt with Joseph with them trying to decide, do we kill him or just sell him into slavery and ruin the rest of his life. Joseph had every reason to hold it against him, every reason to get revenge, every reason for animosity and hatred. And instead, Joseph looks at them with kindness and forgiveness and says, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. Wow. Now there's an example to follow. An example not only of forgiveness, but in trusting God, whatever comes your way in this life. I love to read the Bible for examples to follow, and I urge you to do it. If you're having trouble wondering where, start with the book of Genesis. You'll find examples to follow and examples not to follow. That's your video thought for the day.